Have you ever stopped to think about how the man who changed the world organized his days? How Jesus Christ, the most influential figure in history, structured his routine to maintain connection with the divine while facing crowds, critics, and the most important mission ever entrusted to a human being? The answer might surprise you, and more importantly, it can completely transform the way you live your own spirituality. Because here's the truth, few people realize Jesus wasn't just a spiritual master. He was a living example of discipline, balance, and intentional practices that anyone can apply today. In the next few minutes, I'm going to reveal the secrets of Jesus' spiritual routine, and I guarantee what you'll discover goes far beyond what's taught in churches. Stay until the end, because I'm going to share the most powerful practice Jesus did daily that most people completely ignore. Let's start at the beginning. How did Jesus start his day? The answer is recorded in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 1, verse 35. And pay attention, because this detail is crucial. Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. Do you see the pattern? While it was still dark, before the sun rose, before the demands of the day, before the crowds, before anything else, Jesus practiced what we now call the sacred morning hour. He woke up when the world was still sleeping. And there's a profound reason for this that goes beyond simple discipline. Think with me. After an entire day healing the sick, casting out demons, and teaching multitudes, Jesus was exhausted. Peter's house was packed with people. Everyone wanted a piece of him. It would be perfectly justifiable to sleep in a bit longer, recover his energy. But no. He woke up even earlier. Why? Because Jesus understood something fundamental. His strength didn't come from himself. It came from connection with the Father, and this connection needed to be renewed daily, as a priority, intentionally. He didn't wait to have time. He created time. And here's the first great teaching. Your spiritual life will never be strong if it depends on leftover time. Jesus showed us that you need to give God the first moment of the day, not the last. The best time, not what's left over. But there's more. Jesus didn't just wake up early. He went to a solitary place. He physically removed himself from distractions. He created an environment conducive to spiritual encounter. Today, most people wake up and the first thing they do is grab their phone. Scroll social media, check messages, absorb other people's anxieties and urgencies before even connecting with God. Jesus teaches us the opposite. First, sacred solitude, then the world. But what exactly did Jesus do during those solitary hours before dawn? He prayed, but it wasn't a superficial, mechanical, or ritualistic prayer. It was something deep, transformative, real. Luke gives us a fascinating clue in chapter 6, verse 12. One of those days, Jesus went out to a mountainside to pray and spent the night praying to God. The entire night. Praying. This reveals something extraordinary about the quality and depth of Jesus' prayer life. It wasn't just reciting words. It was entering into a communion so deep that hours passed without him noticing. And observe, this happened before choosing the 12 apostles. Before one of the most important decisions of his ministry, Jesus spent the entire night in prayer. The pattern is clear. The greater the decision, the more intense the prayer. But what was this prayer like? Jesus gave us a window to understand this in the Garden of Gethsemane. There, on the eve of his death, we see Jesus' prayer in its rawest and most honest form. "Father, if it is possible, take this cup from me. Yet not as I will, but as you will." Do you see the elements? Brutal honesty, expression of his true feelings, but also surrender, alignment with the divine will. Jesus didn't pretend in God's presence. He didn't use pretty words or religious masks. He was real, vulnerable, authentic. And then he surrendered. This is the essence of transformative prayer, truth followed by surrender. But there's another crucial aspect of Jesus' prayer life that few notice. He prayed out loud. The disciples could hear him. In John 17, we have an entire prayer of Jesus recorded, word for word. This teaches us that praying out loud has power. You hear yourself. Your words gain substance. Your faith is strengthened when your own ears hear your declarations. Jesus also prayed with his eyes open, looking toward heaven. He prayed while walking. He prayed on his knees. He prayed prostrate with his face to the ground. The posture varied, but the intensity was constant. And here's something that can revolutionize your prayer life. Jesus didn't pray just to ask for things. He prayed to remain connected, to align his will with the Father's, to strengthen his mission. Prayer was his source of power, his spiritual recharge, his daily food. That's why, before each important miracle, we see Jesus praying. Before raising Lazarus, prayer. Before feeding 5,000 people, prayer. Before healing, prayer. The power didn't come from him. It flowed through him from this constant connection. But Jesus' spiritual routine wasn't just prayer. There was another fundamental pillar, the sacred scriptures. Jesus deeply knew the Torah, the prophets, the Psalms. He had immersed himself in these words since childhood. And this became evident in his ministry. When he was tempted in the desert for 40 days, how did Jesus respond to each of Satan's temptations? With scripture. "It is written" was his spiritual weapon. 3 temptations, 3 biblical responses, total victory. This reveals something crucial. Jesus didn't just read the scriptures. He had them so internalized that they could spring from him instantly in the moment of need. He meditated on them, ruminated, absorbed. And here's the difference between superficial reading and deep meditation. Reading passes through the eyes. Meditation penetrates the heart. Jesus taught with authority because the scriptures weren't just information in his mind. They were revelation in his spirit. When he taught in the synagogues, people were amazed. Why? Because he taught as one who had authority, and not as the scribes. The scribes knew the words. Jesus knew the author. He quoted Isaiah, Jeremiah, the Psalms, Deuteronomy, connected texts, revealed hidden meanings, showed how all scripture pointed to himself. And observe, Jesus didn't use scripture to impress. He used it to liberate, to heal, to reveal truths that transformed lives. This teaches us that biblical study shouldn't be academic or theoretical. It should be transformative and practical. Jesus asked questions while reading, sought God's heart behind the words, allowed Scripture to mold him, guide him, strengthen him. And here's a revolutionary practice. Jesus prayed the Scriptures. In Psalm 22, on the cross, he cries out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" He was quoting a psalm, transforming Scripture into prayer. This is one of the most powerful spiritual practices you can adopt. Read the Bible until a verse touches your heart, and then transform it into personal prayer. Now let's talk about a practice that Jesus did, but many prefer to ignore: fasting. After his baptism, before beginning his public ministry, Jesus was led by the Spirit into the desert. And there, for 40 days and 40 nights, he fasted. 40 days without food. It wasn't an empty ritual. It was intense spiritual preparation for the mission that was to come. Fasting did something in Jesus' spirit that nothing else could do. It clarified his mind, sharpened his spiritual perception, strengthened his dependence on God. And observe, it was exactly at the end of this fast, when he was weakest physically, that he faced the most powerful temptations. And he won. This teaches us that spiritual strength doesn't come from a well-fed body. It comes from a well-connected spirit. Jesus taught about fasting to his disciples. In Matthew 6, he doesn't say, "if you fast," but "when you fast." It was an expectation, not an option. But he warned against fasting to impress others. Fasting isn't religious performance. It's intimacy with God. When you fast, do not look somber as the hypocrites do, for they disfigure their faces to show others they are fasting. True fasting is secret. It's between you and God. And it has power. When the disciples couldn't cast out a demon, Jesus explained, "This kind can come out only by prayer and fasting." There are levels of spiritual power that are only accessed through the discipline of fasting. Why? Because fasting is voluntary renunciation. It's telling the body that the spirit is in command. It's breaking the tyranny of physical appetites. Jesus fasted regularly, and this practice kept him spiritually sharp, sensitive to the Father's voice, powerful against the forces of darkness. Let's return now to a recurring theme in the Gospels. Jesus regularly sought solitude. Jesus, knowing that they intended to come and make him king by force, withdrew again to a mountain by himself. Even at the height of his popularity, when the crowds wanted him as king, Jesus withdrew, alone. This is deeply counterintuitive. Most of us, when we're at the top, want more exposure, more recognition, more stage time. Jesus did the opposite. He intentionally pulled back. Why? Because he understood that solitude is essential for spiritual health. In solitude, you hear God's voice without interference. In solitude, you shed your social masks. In solitude, you face your true motivations, fears, and desires. Jesus practiced what we now call spiritual retreats. He regularly withdrew to deserted places, mountains, silent gardens. And observe, he did this especially after great moments of ministry. After feeding 5,000 people, he sent the crowd away and went up the mountain to pray alone. After intense healing and teaching, he withdrew. This teaches us a vital principle. Spiritual activity without contemplative solitude leads to burnout. You can't constantly give without constantly receiving, and you receive in solitude. Jesus rejected the tyranny of urgency. There were always more people to heal, more lessons to teach, more needs to meet. But he established boundaries, created spaces of non-doing, because being is no less important than doing. In solitude, Jesus reconnected with his identity, not as the miracle worker, not as the teacher, but as the beloved Son of the Father. And from this identity flowed everything else. Today, solitude is extinct. We're constantly connected, constantly stimulated, constantly distracted. Jesus shows us This is spiritually unsustainable. You need moments without your phone, without people, without noise, moments where it's just you and God. But here's something fascinating. Jesus wasn't just contemplative. He was also extremely active. He taught, healed, cast out demons, multiplied bread, walked long distances, confronted Pharisees, instructed disciples. His life was intensely productive. So how did he balance contemplation with action, retreat with mission, prayer with work? The answer lies in understanding that, for Jesus, there was no separation between sacred and secular. Everything was spiritual. When he healed a leper, it was a spiritual act. When he shared a meal with sinners, it was a spiritual act. When he confronted religious hypocrisy, it was a spiritual act. Jesus practiced what we now call mindfulness, or contemplative presence. He was fully present in each moment, in each conversation, in each action. When a woman touched the edge of his garment in the middle of a crowd, Jesus stopped, asked who had touched him, gave total attention to that one person. This is the key: quality of presence, not quantity of activities. Jesus was never in a hurry. Even with only 3 years of ministry and a cosmic mission to fulfill, he walked in peace, ate calmly, conversed without rush. He lived from a center of inner peace that wasn't shaken by external urgencies. And here's the glorious paradox. Jesus accomplished more in 3 years than most people do in a lifetime. And he did it without hurry, without stress, without anxiety. How? Because he didn't try to do everything. He only did what the Father showed him. "I can do nothing by myself," he said. "I only do what I see the Father doing." This is liberating. You don't need to do everything. You only need to do what God is doing through you. Jesus teaches us that spiritual productivity isn't about active frenzy. It's about focused obedience. So, what have we learned about Jesus' spiritual routine? First, he started the day in God's presence before anything else. Second, his prayer was deep, honest, and constant. Third, he meditated on Scripture until it became part of him. Fourth, he practiced fasting regularly to sharpen his spiritual sensitivity. Fifth, he intentionally sought solitude to renew his soul. Sixth, he balanced contemplation with action, living each moment with total presence. And here's the final truth. Jesus didn't do these things because he had to. He did them because he loved to, because his joy was in the Father's presence. This is the spiritual routine that transformed the world, not through human power or brilliant strategies, but through a man completely connected with God. And the question that remains is, what will you do with this? Will you continue living a spiritually shallow life, running from one distraction to another? Or will you adopt the rhythms that Jesus taught us? The choice is yours, but now you know the secret. Wake up early, pray deeply, meditate on Scripture, fast intentionally, seek solitude, live present, and watch your life transform from the inside out. Because if it worked for Jesus, it can work for you. If this message touched your heart, if you want to grow spiritually, understand Jesus' teachings more deeply, and walk in daily wisdom, subscribe now to Kingdom of Wisdom. Here, we share weekly content to strengthen your faith, renew your mind, and transform your spiritual journey. Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any new message. Leave a like so more people can hear this word, and share this video with someone who needs it today. May God's wisdom guide every step of your path. See you in the next video.